Hello again, this is your attorney, Ji-won Lee. Today, I'd like to introduce everything you need to know about the arrest warrant in Korea. It's actually a very complicated system and has many articles prescribed in the Criminal Procedure Act because it involves detention of a person and heavily limits private property. However, we are not in a law school, so I'll provide a complete yet simple summary of the arrest warrant in a real-life situation. You might have seen in a K-drama or movie where an innocent one or perhaps a villain gets arrested by the police. Or you might have seen a Korean news about alleged criminals who got arrested, such as Ko Yoo-jung, who is strongly suspected of killing her ex-husband and dumped the body, or Cho Joo-bin, who operated the online sextortion via Telegram known as Nbonbang, or Kim Tae-hyun, who murdered the mother and her two daughters just because one of the daughters refused to go out with him. An arrest warrant or a warrant of detention is a warrant issued by a judge on behalf of the state, which authorizes the arrest and detention of an individual for a certain period of time. Then let's suppose there's a robber or a fraud. There are two cases when the suspect gets arrested. First, when he was caught in the middle of the alleged crime. And second, when the police or prosecutor decides to request an arrest warrant during the crime investigation. Let's see the first case, and let's suppose there's a suspect got caught by the bystander in the middle of the crime scene. Any person may arrest a flagrant offender without a warrant, therefore it's legit. Of course, a person who arrested a suspect must hand him over to the police immediately. However, a person cannot stay detained forever for obvious reasons. Therefore, such an arrest is effective only for 48 hours. In other words, if someone needs to be detained for a certain period of time, police or the prosecutor must request for an arrest warrant to the district court within 48 hours after the arrest. Second case might be more familiar to you because most of the arrests are done during the crime investigation. When the police request an arrest warrant, the judge will review certain criteria before deciding whether to issue the arrest warrant or not. These criteria are: does the defendant have a fixed dwelling? Whether there is a reasonable ground enough to suspect that the defendant may destroy evidence? And is there reasonable ground enough to suspect that the defendant may flee? In addition, the judge also takes into consideration the seriousness of a crime, risk of a repetition of the crime, anticipated harm to the victim, important witnesses or such, in examining grounds for detention. After the thorough review, the judge of the district court who is requested of an arrest warrant will make a decision immediately as to whether a warrant of detention will be issued. When a warrant of detention gets issued, the defendant will be transferred to the detention center, and when dismissed, he may get back home. One thing to keep in mind is the effective period of an arrest warrant. Once the arrest warrant is issued, it is valid for a month in maximum during the investigation. And when the case goes to the trial, it is up to 6 months in maximum for each trial. So if the trial continues up to the Supreme Court, it will be valid for a year and a half in maximum. There are a lot more interesting features about an arrest warrant and the detention center, and I might introduce them in the later video. I hope this video helped you, and thanks for watching. Again, this is your attorney, Ji-won Lee.